Hi, today I'll be showing you how I draw and paint gore. I'll be doing it in my own personal way. It's kind of a tutorial, but I'm also just going to show you how I do it and try to explain my way through that. I'm not really professionally trained or anything like that. I am an art student, so I'm still learning. Apart from that, I will be kind of talking about how I source my references for gore and injuries and blood, etc., etc., and how I try to do it in a more ethical way. Sometimes it can be hard to know the origins of certain images, and I highly advise you to really look into what you're referencing when drawing gore, especially if it's heavy and especially if it's very bad. And with that, let's get into it. Welcome to the voiceover. So first we're starting with this gore portrait. It's just the skull being exposed and some of the muscle tissue. Now the reference I used for this I got from an old anatomy drawing, which is very easy to find on the internet, and a lot of them are very old, so there's no copyright to them and you can use them in whatever way you please, which is a great resource for artists, and I highly recommend using old anatomy drawings because there's a lot of variety. Some of them are just skulls, a lot of them are also like things like muscle tissue, fat tissue, veins. It's just a really easy way to kind of get a good idea of what's underneath the skin, which is very important when drawing gore, is that you actually know what's going on underneath the skin. In this piece I was mainly focused on the exposed muscle mass, but I also wanted some pieces of exposed skull. I could have added a lot more blood if I wanted to be realistic, but for stylistic choices I decided not to. It's also really important to remember the actual order in which all these skin layers lay upon each other. That's really a good way to think about them as layers, because your skin and body is made up of a lot of layers of organs, bones, skin, fat, etc., etc. It's important to remember that when drawing like exposed wounds, open wounds, especially if they're deep like this one. Though I wouldn't really call this a wound, it's more like a view into someone's face, basically. This painting is more of an educational one, just to show you how you can kind of play with those layers, and it's not as much an actual wound or something, but I do feel like you can use these techniques in actual wound drawing of your OC or whatever you want to draw. But this next one isn't really gore, but it's still in the same family. We're drawing a keloid scar, which is a raised scar. I really like painting these scars. I think they're super fun. This one's on a hand. It's just a raised bump, so I made sure to highlight it because the texture of a scar tissue is very different from texture of normal skin. It's very thick, it's very shiny. I wanted to highlight that, and because also I think scars get drawn pretty badly sometimes. Like, a lot of people don't really know what certain injuries would look like, which is fine because it's hard to find a proper reference. But what I usually do is I don't search for things specifically, because that's a good way to get like actual gore and stuff. But what I do is when I find a picture of a scar online, and it's usually a picture that someone consented to have on the internet, because it's either in a medical book or it's before or after pic of surgery, which is really like, I feel good about that because I know that person is alright with having it be out there, which isn't always the case. But what I do is when I find a picture like that on the internet, like Tumblr or Pinterest, is just look at the recommended pictures below that, because there's likely to be more of the same genre. Tumblr is a little sketchy sometimes, but Pinterest is generally very, very good at like regulating their platform, so you are unlikely to find anything bad there. It is maybe sometimes harder to find the origin of the picture, but oftentimes it's also linked, especially if it's from a medical journal. It will often be credited, which is very helpful in our case for artists. As far as painting scars goes, it's always important to remember things like the age of the scar, the skin of the person, because it varies very much for person to person what kind of healing they do. Do they heal quickly? Do they heal very slow? Are they maybe white? Are they brown skinned? That will affect the color of the scar, etc. etc. All things to keep in mind. So that was my general gore slash scar tutorial. I might in the future make some more specific videos where I specifically go into what happens if you have this wound, what happens if you have this wound, etc. etc. Because I think that would be interesting. Let me know if you want that, and thank you so much for watching. That was all the knowledge I have.